Hello, and welcome to the Potential State. I'm Dr. Assael Romanelli, and today I want to introduce a fresh approach to systematic female empowerment. Yes, I am a man, and therefore I could be disqualified for being an entitled oppressor who's part of the problem and not part of the solution, and another man who thinks he knows what women need. So that's all true, but for the sake of argument, give me some leeway to kind of introduce this idea. So I'm going to start this little talk with an exploration of a book called Who's Afraid of Lilith, written by two rabbis, Rabbi Gafni and Rabbi Ezrachi, and basically they're talking about the two stories of creation. In the first story of creation, man and woman were created equal, and the legend says, or the Jewish legend is that Lilith was just as strong as Adam, and she refused to be his subordinate. She refused to be under him, and Adam wasn't man enough to deal with it, so he banished her, he sent her away, and by the time he regretted that action, it was too late. She already slept with the devil, and she became kind of like a demon, and she's been demonized in Jewish tradition. And in this book, they give a different, like more of a psychological analysis of that. And they're just saying the first woman, the Lilith, represents the powerful, strong, assertive, erotic, artistic, passionate, selfish archetype of the woman. And man, Adam couldn't deal with it, so God created the other side, the other aspect, the Eve aspect, which is the nurturing, mothering, domestic, wholesome part of the woman. And their book talks about how can women engage, empower, connect, enlarge their Lilith aspect of themselves. And that book really resonated with me even before I had kids, and it was clear to me that one day I'm going to name my daughter Lilith. And when I met Galit, we both loved the idea, but in Israel it's a bit complicated to call your daughter Lilith. We ended up calling her Lila, which kind of resembles Lilith, but also has different meanings, but that's a different story. So I was into Lilith, and I loved that idea of strong women. And then throughout my career in the different fields I work in, whether it's psychotherapy, education, improvisation, training, teaching, consulting, whatever, I've realized that something's been happening with me in the past few years with working with women and empowering them. And I wanted to give my approach, my experience. First of all, I think in their book they talk about, right, Lilith and Eve. So the equivalent of that is Jacob and Esau, which I spoke about in the talk about anger. You check that out. So I think a lot of times I represent Esau, the hairy, artistic, out there, extroverted alpha male. And I think that brings out, or that entices, or that triggers a lot of times the Lilith inside, or the Eve, depends what, of different women. And I think what's happening is the reason I can push them is because I'm not a woman. So I don't share the same blind spots. I did not grow up with the same limitations, with the same socialization. So I'm actually coming to their encounter with different eyes. And in my eyes, I can see all the parts of her that she can't see herself. Her hidden strengths, her hidden weaknesses, her shadow, all her negative aspects that she refuses to see inside herself. And I can see that because A, I'm not her. B, I'm a man, so I'm built differently. And like, think about remember that movie Inside Out? Like, what's inside my mind is different than what's inside her mind. And more than that is I work on helping people see their shadows, see the parts of them that they don't want to see, under the belief that it's in those shadows that we have strength. So I want to incorporate right now this idea of aggression by Carl Whitaker. We spoke about that later, previously, about when we spoke about anger, about aggression actually being composed of two elements: assertiveness and hostility. A lot of us shy away from aggression. Aggression is bad. It's not okay to be aggressive, both for men and for women. And what we're doing is we're killing also the assertiveness. And that was the anger talk. But I want to give it a different spin today. I want to give a few examples of where aggression and where assertiveness, or where women, if they want to really feel empowered, they're going to have to hug and hold their shadow. All those other parts of them, some of them they love, right? The strong, powerful, sexual, erotic part, but also their aggressive, selfish, vindictive parts. They go together. You can't have one without the other. So I was working with mid-career women, professional women in their mid-30s, all of them in the middle of the machine, with men on both sides, sandwiched between males. They're obviously feeling disempowered and weak and tired and not heard. And I remember one of them said, "Today, this month was a good month. I didn't cry all month." And I was thinking to myself, and they were clapping each other and they were cheering each other up for not crying. I was thinking, wait, that doesn't make sense. Why do they have to be less of a woman for her to feel strong? I ended up, a long story short, I ended up having 30 minutes with a few of them. I'm just with no plan, just do whatever you want. All they kept saying, I want to feel powerful, I want to feel strong, I want to liberate myself from these limiting beliefs. And so I kind of improvised this activity for them where I said, we're going to work in pairs and we're going to be working aggressive. We're going to be working physical. One of you will be talking about your passion, about your calling, and the other one is either going to like do kickboxing on you or kind of do these little punches in the stomach or move you as you are blindfolded, but actually churn up some energy, churn up some libido, churn up some aggression, even a little bit of hostility, get that umph. And not just to sit and talk and talk. And what was really interesting is that the second they got up from the chairs and they started actually also hitting, but also being hit, like something about that encounter brought out an amelic, powerful, strong archetype inside of them. And here we have to combine it with the idea of sublimation, Freud's defense mechanism, which is expressing aggression in socially acceptable ways. So a lot of times what I see is women, and especially young women, they turn their aggression inward, right? And that's where we get eating disorders, cutting themselves, depression, et cetera, but can we find venues where we can turn that outward and actually have, and so what these women were doing, they were sublimating their aggression, all this pent-up energy, all this assertiveness and hostility, because it goes together. One goes without the other. And it was a very, very powerful space to see a bunch of women liberating themselves, connecting to their Lilith sides while being physical. And that experience stayed with me for a while. And then I want to give a different example. So I teach a weekly class at a playback theater improvisation class, which basically means improvised theater based on people's stories. And many times what happens, I have a lot of women that have been with me for 5-6 years. This is a long time to work together. And what I've noticed is once they get that confidence, they feel strong, every character they have comes out as invincible, as superwomen. And they never accept influence. They are never changed. Regardless of whatever anyone tells them, male or female, they always win. They're always strong. They never fall. They never fail. Which I think is like the mirror image of the victim mentality, right? I ask men not to, put their leg off my neck, that whole phrase, like we are victims. So when we're on stage, we're going to flip it. We're going to be superwoman, invincible, nothing you can say. But what's happening is they're stuck. They're stuck in the opposite. It's almost like they're so extreme in the Lilith that there is no life there. It becomes a stuck, solid, not permeable, not accessible, not ecological version of themselves. And I want to take that further and give that example of how do you do both. And a while back I was working with this couple and the woman felt like her husband was very aggressive. Now she was the pursuer and her husband was the distancer, and her business card, their dance was that she always wants more intimacy and he's very aggressive and he never listens to her and he cuts her off, etc., etc. And she wants to be empowered. She's like, I am tired. I'm, like early 50s. I want to, this is my time to grow. This is my time to be heard. And something about that felt that she's already minimizing herself even before we began. Anyway, so we're in a session and her husband's telling some stories about where he felt not seen by her. And she was shocked. She couldn't believe it. What? She's blind to her husband's need. Her husband's not just the persecutor. If we're thinking about the victim triangle, he's not just the persecutor. He's sometimes also my victim. She couldn't understand that. So when he was done, she was so shocked. What she said is, do you even love me? She starts crying and she starts, well, what is this marriage? And there was this moment where I was thinking to myself, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for a good enough reaction because something inside me said, wait. And I said, stop. You are dropping the nuclear bomb, the victim nuclear bomb, that the second he says something that he's also heard, you cannot share that role. It's impossible that also you'll be hurt and also he'll be hurt. So you go nuclear and you say, do you even love me? And let's talk about divorce and crying. And I said, own the fact that you're sending a mixed message, that there's a part of you that wants to hear him more, but there's a part of you that wants to hear only what you want to hear. And if his narrative is going to be different, you're going to nuclear bomb it. And she was shocked in the beginning, and I was sure she was going to, step out of the session or stop it. But actually she breathed and she said, okay, Keep going. And then we kept on going, and she talked about, I want to be a werewolf. I want to be strong. Because she, the metaphor that came up was she was Little Red Riding Hood, and her husband and everyone else, including me, are wolves. All the men are wolves, right? So I said to her, if you're going to be a werewolf, you need to realize that one of the losses you will lose, one of the secondary losses or implications of that change, if it's a second order change, is that you're going to have to start seeing the sheep in the wolves around you. You cannot hold the victim role and also become a werewolf. It doesn't go together because it's a systematic viewpoint. If I'm just the victim, like in the improv, right? If these women are just pretending to go to the other extreme, that's also not real. That's also not sustainable. So I said to her, you want to be a werewolf? Then you're going to have to let go of being the only victim around you. You're going to have to be owning the fact that you sometimes castrate your husband, that sometimes you don't listen to him, that sometimes you ridicule him, sometimes you make him feel less than you. And you need to own that. And once you own that, then you will be empowered. Because Lilith is not just the strong, artistic one. She's also the selfish one. She's also the aggressive one. You always hurt the ones you love, both men and women, both Eve's and Lilith's and Jacob's and Esau's. And that was a strong moment for her. And I want to give another example, a different woman. A while back, I was working with her. She was very, very creative until she met her husband, who was an artist. And then she kind of gave up her whole artistic side. She gave up on her Lilith, becoming a full-time mom. And she comes a few years later saying, why don't men want me? I want these men, and why don't I want me? And her position, her business card was a very low status, very one down. And that's not what I was feeling. I was feeling that there's another whole aspect of her, the aggressive, the manipulative one, not in a bad way, but it's there, and she refused. And I was calling on her, I was begging her to see, and I was trying different ways, and she could not see that. She would not. That was ego dystonic. She rejected that, because if she really would accept the fact that she's not just a victim, but she also manipulates, and she also had all these plans, and there's actually a deeper truth also to that marriage. It's not that he was just an asshole, but also there were some things that she did as well. Like the second she can soften that narrative and step out of the oppressed victim, it's going to liberate her. But the price she will pay is she will have to accept that she has shadows. She has to accept that she's not perfect, and that is hard. And I want to give one more example of this from my own life with my wife, Galit. One day we're watching TV, and I go to check on the kids, and I say, could you get me a glass of water? Because she was getting herself a glass of water. And I come back, I see she's sitting watching TV with one glass of water for herself. And I'm coming in, I'm saying, excuse me, Galit, I asked you to bring me two. And she turns around, looks me straight in the eyes and says, so I ask her, why didn't you get me water? And then she looks me in the eye, she doesn't blink, and she says, because I'm lazy and I'm selfish. Boom. No apology, no cuteness, no giggles. She just said it. And something about that moment was she just owned her shadow. She owned the Lilith. She was the Lilith. And I was done. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't angry. It was a beautiful moment where I just saw her. I got that. And I went to get a glass of water. So I want to give that example of, if you really want to empower women, empower yourself, you are going to have to look at this systematically. Because what happens is, just like when we work with addicts, we take them to a rehabilitation center, we clean them up, and then we send them back to the same system where they grew up in, where they live in, and we notice that they slide right back down to the addiction. You want to do systematic change? Of course we need to work with men, and we need to raise a generation of sensitive men who respect women. That's true. That's part of it. That's a huge part of it. And I also want to suggest a fresh approach of female empowerment through hugging the shadow, through owning your shit, through letting go of certain roles or certain monopolies that you have for being hurt, or being the sensitive one, or being the one that always forgives, or being the one that always listens, because that's not true and that's not real. And if you present that, you will keep attracting to your life men who like that business card. Because if you're all victim, they're all persecutor. If you're all feelings, they're all Neanderthals. If you're always listening, then they're never going to listen, because there's a balance. It's a system. You want your partner, colleague, boss, child to listen to you more. Own the fact that you listen less. Own the facts when you're lazy. Own the facts when you're selfish. And then you will actually be liberating yourself to an integrated Lilith Eve model. The 22nd century woman who can help the men find the integration between Esau and Jacob, find that combination. So I want to add some thoughts, some tips for all the women out there or the men out there that love their women or anybody who wants to work with anybody. First of all, think about, do you even want to liberate the Lilith inside of you? Is that something that interests you? What are going to be the secondary gains and secondary losses? How is that going to change and revolutionize your relationships? Now, I want to also add here, a systematic view would say not just revolutionize, but what are the prices you're going to pay? What relationships might change or end because of this? It's not just all good. It's not like you get stronger and everything gets better. No, you get stronger, there's crisis, ruptures, second order change, and we spoke about that. You can check out that talk about systematic change. Second thing, list all the positive and negative attributes or parts of yourself that you're not bringing to the table, that you're not owning. So start with the positive ones, because that's the easier ones for you to see. My strength, my voice, my passion, my sexuality, my energy, my creativity. Great. And then do all those other parts, the negative parts of yourself that you don't own. Okay? And just a random list, your aggression, your selfishness, your narcissism, your vindictiveness, right? The places where you're cheap, where you're bitter, where you're cranky. And not just because you're exhausted and everybody wants something from you. No, it's because that's part of who you are. Because we all have those parts, not just men, also women. List those and see what are their positive intentions? Why are they there? How are they serving you? Just make sure that you're checking one by one to see if you're willing to kind of find a new way to fulfill that positive intention. Once you've done that, and you're going on this journey, so dare to say the thing and call yourself out. What do I mean by that? Like Gilly told me, because I'm selfish and I'm lazy. Because I don't have energy to talk to you right now. I actually prefer to pretend like you're not listening, but I'm actually not listening. No, I actually don't want to have sex right now. Or actually, I don't want to have this conversation. Or actually, I don't like this activity, or I don't even understand why we're at this movie, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, once you own it, and you're not saying because you forced me, because that's where you are, because that's your truth. What you're going to be experiencing in the beginning, people are either going to think you're joking, laughing, or going to get insulted. Now, by being insulted is the ultimate block. We'll talk about that at another time, but they're going to try to push you back to being the sweet, the smiley, sweet one. And that reminds me of one more example, which I have to give, of a woman in a different seminar. We spoke about her smiling and how she's cute. And I called her on it, and she listened to it. And the next time we met, 2-3 days into the seminar, she told me, you know, you haven't reapproached me since I've stopped smiling. I've made this conscious effort not to smile, and you haven't approached me. And when she said that, I was like, yes, that's one of the prices she paid. She stopped smiling. She stopped being cute and sweet, and I approached her less. And that was a real moment of truth, real moment of seeing the systematic change. And I really thanked her for that. And this is just a classic example, right? You drop the cute, you become more Lilith, you're going to get less attention from some men who like the cuteness. You'll be attracting different kind of men, different kind of workplaces, different kind of interactions and friendships. But that's like a real example. Even somebody like me who loves the Liliths, sometimes when I meet the Liliths, I can't, or I won't, or I just won't go there. But the fact that she even told me that is exactly saying the thing and calling herself on it. She invited the Esau out of me. She invited the integrative Jacob and Esau out of me so we can have a complete experience where she's also honest and open and connected and also powerful and strong, where she can call me out, where she can even stick it to me in the sense of like a jab or a comment or constructive feedback, and I can take it like a man. And then what we're having is this concept of ezel kenegdo in Hebrew, which means like somebody that's aiding but is against me. He's pushing up. It's like it's the actual metaphor of someone pushing against me and helping me grow. And if you go back to Carl Whitaker, he said if people are not in relationships, they're crippled, they're handicapped because they're not seeing their blind spots. So a real partner, whether it's a colleague, friend, a husband, wife, he or she is going to press on my blind spot. It's going to help me grow. So the last thing is, don't try to hold on to your traditional role as well as the new Lilith role, because you can't have it both ways. By just being in the same role, but just being stronger, like those women who were improvising, right? That is going to still get the same reaction from the system, because they're going to be seeing that you're trying to hold on everything. So allow yourself to let go of the traditional roles, traditional perceptions, traditional stereotype of either men, or not just even men, but of certain relationships you have. And then you will notice it's probably going to get worse in the beginning, because you're going to be feeling the pushback of the system through threats, ultimatums, not talking to you, being insulted, psychosomatic, whatever. But if you can last through that, through those ruptures, through those stormy seas, what you're going to be evolving into is a new evolution of you, an integrated, systematic, second order change into the integrated Lilith Eve woman. And it's my hope that our kids, our generation, but hopefully at least our kids, will be able to integrate those two parts of themselves, the Lilith and the Eve, the Jacob and the Esau, to create men and women who can be on a complete level with all their shadows in the light, and they can choose how to bring themselves, and to allow men and women to fluctuate on the whole emotional, spiritual, physical, aggression realm, to create, fulfill, enriching relationships, families, communities, and the world. So my name is Dr. Assael Romanelli, and this was The Potential State. I'll see you next time.